Today I would like to discuss the Schumann chart itself. There's been a bit of a controversy brewing in the background with so many days of green on the charts, with no, major pops in the resonances. Some people have started to use the Heart Math charts, and I just wanted to address this and talk about it a little bit and also explain why I continue to use the Space Observing System charts. The Space Observing System charts are from the Space Observing System in Tomsk, Russia. And in my view, they're just the best charts to use for this. I've talked about this on other videos, but NASA used to put out some data several years ago on the Schumann resonance, and that disappeared. I can no longer find those pages. And when I mean data, I mean actual data. Now they have just kind of an overview describing what it is in a couple places. I just wonder if part of the reason they don't publish it has to do with the fact that there are various ELF technologies, etc., that have been researched, for example, by the U.S. Navy, and maybe there's a view that there's a proprietary nature to this data. I mean, if you look back in olden times, maps were considered proprietary. It wasn't until recent decades that people had maps. And, it's interesting because I lived in Ireland. And in Ireland, I always used to laugh because, you'd be driving. And especially once you got out of the city, but all the road signs would be pointed in the wrong direction. No, not all of them, but a lot of them. And, you'd get to make a turn and the sign would be pointing through like a huge grassy field. And it's interesting because now my summation, my belief as to why that was that they had oppressors in the country for centuries. And they figured out how to get around people knowing, how to get places that they didn't want them to go. So that's just that's my opinion. That's what it appeared like to me, that there was an ingrained habit. Okay, so information can have a proprietary aspect to it, and I don't know. That's what I come up with for why NASA does not put out the data. If they put out the data and it was as detailed as Space Observing System, I'd be happy to use it. Now, the Heart Math Spectrogram calendar is also very fascinating. I'll put a link down to it. And what they do is they show the spectrogram calendar. So I'll put a link to their direct page down below. And what you'll see is that they have data from 6 sites around the world, including California, the Middle East, South Africa, and a number of other sites. What you'll notice when you look at that data is that the Schumann resonance does vary by area of the world. And in some areas of the world, it might be more powerful in the moment. And right now, the resonance on the spectrogram calendar for Heart Math is showing South Africa to be having these huge waves of light. And I do want to give you my explanation of what I think is going on with those waves of light in Africa. Because Africa has, in my view, special energetics. All countries have, from an energy standpoint, now this is not scientific, now I'm going to speak to a spiritual and occult nature, but from a spiritual standpoint, what I have seen in energy is that all nations, all countries have their own angels, if you will. They have their own spiritual team. And to do energy work in a country, even to visit a country at a spiritual level, you have to be approved. And this is especially true for certain countries. Ireland is one of those, actually. But I'm guessing it's true in large part around the world. What I'm going to do is I'm going to continue using these charts, the Russian charts. They're an excellent source of information. They provide a lot of detail. It's a lot of opportunities for interpretation because they also give you the numbers that are going on behind the scenes. And the fact is that there is a lot going on behind the scenes, but it is very muted right now. And if you'll notice, when you look at those spectrogram charts, you'll note that the Heart Math charts even are muted basically all around the world, with the exception of South Africa. And I'm going to tell you what I think is going on energetically in the world. I do want to address that, and it's going to make the video just a little longer for me to explain a little background on that. But first, I want to go into just the use of the charts in general. Now, some people are doing real research and they really want to understand, and so they're looking for other sources. And I completely agree with that kind of approach, and I value that as a researcher myself. Having more information and being able to assess it is always good. But I have a feeling that there's also a kind of a troll aspect that's going on here. An attempt to create controversy where there really isn't any. And I know that there was no data on November 3rd in the Space Observing System charts, but the fact of the matter is that happens frequently if you follow the Schumann resonance for any length of time. So the focus of all of us on the Schumann resonance, I think, is very important, and here's why. What the Schumann resonance shows us is it shows us how powerful we are as human beings. I've spoken before about how I feel that human beings affect this chart anecdotally. Major events happen, and then a wave of light will come in. And I have more to say about that, but that's going to have to be on another video. But these major events are events that involve humanity and human response that you can visually see around you or in the news, and then you'll have a burst of the white resonance. And so, I think that some of us there may almost be a feeling of abandonment that we might have, because we know that the white resonance represents the divine and divine energies, and they haven't been coming through, and there's a lot of controversies and a lot going on with the American election. The outcome for some people seems to be in question. I know what I feel has happened, and I'm completely confident that the light will prevail, and that the winner will be declared in alignment with divine will, in the highest good of our country and the world. The fact of the matter is that maybe some of you are hurting. Maybe some of you are in fear. Maybe some of you are just wanting information, wanting human contact, wanting that visual show that the divine has our backs. And then what happens? The last wave of light that we got was 3.5 weeks ago. That's a long time. And what I want to show you is that I did the video on this, and it's linked below. But what appeared, it was a guillotine. The white resonance showed us a guillotine, okay? And then it showed us the breakup of, so it showed us tyranny, okay? And then it showed us that we could break up tyranny. And since then, there's been no more white resonance. So listen, on a spiritual level, I want to address this. God is calling us to step forward. That's how I see that. Because, and I explained this on a previous video, while the Schumann, is said to be created by electricity, and I explain why I think that humans assist in creating these images on the spectrogram in our group consciousness or our group energetic, it's my view also that the human heart is a receiver for this white resonance, And the fact of the matter, this is why I made the videos about a shock to the system and how to recover. and the video after that as well, about how to reconnect with your own source, with God, with the divine, through the seat of the soul in the heart. This is why I made those videos, because I could see that we were in shock. And a lot of the white resonance, like this is just the last week, okay? It's just all, these beautiful green energies. And this has happened before in the chart. But we're at such a critical time in human history that we want to see a sign that God is with us. We want to see the divine resonance powering us up. Right there at our back, we want to see the visual signs of angels, okay? Because look, those of us that are following this, is there a scientific view to this? Yes, but let's face it, there's a spiritual nature to the desire to follow this. There's a search for answers. There's a search for greater awareness to expand consciousness. And in my view, that always involves a search for God or the influence of the divine in our life, the reason why we're here at all. These are critical questions that can shape our entire lives. I know these questions have shaped my entire life. They've shaped it since I was very young. Why am I here? What am I doing here? What is my purpose? And so that's one of the things that's drawn me to this human resonance, is that it can be interpreted from a scientific standpoint, but there's a spiritual standpoint as well. And it also has to do with quantum physics. So when I look at this, I'm interpreting layers of, in my view, dimensional activity, because human beings exist in multiple layers of dimension, although we're physical beings. I talk about this in my videos if you're new to my channel. So I look at this because I have an understanding, and I've been studying quantum physics for about 8 years, and I've studied spirituality for much longer than that. But I interpret it from that perspective, and in quantum physics, God is an integral part of physics, in my view. In quantum physics, you can't interpret quantum physics without the understanding that the divine force is at work in all things. So, and that's how I view it. Okay, so here's what I believe. We had many waves of light. It was so exciting, okay, in the spring, in the summer, and it was wave after wave, and it was just so exciting. But that was to prepare us for now. So I want to communicate the comfort and the inspiration that was the divine at our backs preparing us for now. Because all of that light that came in was to bring transparency to the present moment and all the moments leading up to now, in which all this truth has been uncovered. And I do want to talk specifically about what's going on in my country, the USA, because let's face it, what happens here is going to be a major effect on the rest of the world. But this is a critical moment. If you're an American, or if you're not an American, pray for us, please. Pray for us that the highest good unfolds here. Many years ago, after I lived in Ireland, I came back to the United States, and I was shocked by the energies here, and I was shocked by the transition back to the United States. I wrote a letter to my friends. I had friends from many countries in Ireland, and I wrote a letter to them that I never sent them. And the letter asked them to pray for us here. It's hard to, in a couple of minutes, explain the impressions that I had, and I had a very dramatic dream. And I guess I'll share that with you now. When I returned, and the dream was, I was walking outside in my neighborhood, and I came to an open area where there were hills in front of me, as this isn't a part of the area where I live. And I looked up, and I saw something coming down from the sky, and there was a dark color to it. And I knew that there was something in the air that wasn't good for me, and I needed to go inside. And I wanted to let everyone else know, but I didn't know how. And so I gathered in my home, okay? But now my home was a large house, and it wasn't the house I actually lived in at that time. It was a large house that was filled with other people who were also aware and who had gathered indoors. And we were all indoors, okay? So we knew that we needed to be indoors to protect ourselves from something that was coming from the sky in my dream. And I was looking about, trying to get a sense of understanding of what was going on. And there was an open doorway in this. I was in a very large room with other people milling about, and there was an open doorway. And I looked in the open doorway at what was in the next room. And in the next room, it was full of soldiers. And they were Chinese soldiers. Okay? And now I've had a very, strong interest in the Chinese culture for many, many years because I studied Chinese martial arts, and I had great respect for the culture and the history. But in my dream, the soldiers were there, and they were warily aware of us, and they were in this home, and they were watching. And one of them made eye contact with me, and I knew in that moment that if anyone, I knew that it had to be handled very carefully, okay, what was going on. Because I knew in that moment that if anyone made a very drastic move or gave a certain kind of shout or something else, that that everyone would be, that the soldiers would come in and no one would be left alive. And, now this is my dream, okay? And for many years at the West Coast here, I've seen the dragon off of the coast. I've seen the dragon there, its presence there, watching in the sky. And the sign that I saw, and for my dream that this event was happening, was not pre-pandemic. It was not pre-COVID. It was not a year ago. It was this summer before the election and in the early fall. Preceding the election, I saw the signs in the sky that I saw in my dream. And, there are many experiences I've had that inform my interpretations of the Schumann, where I talk about energy. And this is one of them. When I talk about the fact that this is a critical time both for our country and for the world, this dream is one of the things that informs those, among many others. The entire nature of our country could change on a dime here. The next 2 months are critical. The next 2 months are critical. If Donald Trump is not reelected as the president, and I say that in the space of sacred discharge, the country will never go back to what it was. It is absolutely critical that he's recognized as the true president and the true winner of the election. I've known in my heart that he won in a landslide from the day of the election. And I saw questionable things happen in my voting area that was shocking. Now I'm in California, and it's not one of the states that's being focused on. But let me tell you something. The Sunday before the election, I'm aware of a gathering that had about 20 long-term, lifelong liberal Democrats, all of whom admitted that they were going to vote for President Trump. These are deep blue area people in California. And my friends, if these deep blue, lifelong California Democrat liberals were voting for Trump, that tells you where this election really went, okay? I was just amazed when I heard that. So we have a choice here, and the choice was clearly presented to us in the last wave of light. This is my time to step forward and be brave and say what I really think, because this is our choice, and many people may not recognize it, but thank God so many of us do. The choice is between a complete critical change in this country that has been a beacon of light for decades and decades and maybe 200-something years. You know, I lived in Europe, and what surprised me was how much our elections here mattered to the people that I knew. And I was there in an election year when the president switched from Obama to, it switched from Bush Jr. to Obama. And it was amazing. And I was so proud of our country. I had a Russian housekeeper, and I made her come in, and I had her watch the election results and even Obama's acceptance speech, because I was so proud of us. You know, I was so proud of our country, and I was so proud of us for going from one side of the spectrum to the other. At that time now, knowing what I know now, I would have felt much different. But at the time, what I saw was the best of America. You know, Americans voting for someone not caring about race or the color of their skin. I was just, it was beautiful. And unfortunately, there's been many betrayals, okay? And there's a subtext of betrayal in what's going on. And I think that's why the lack of white resonance affects us so much over the past 3.5 weeks. Because we have the sense that we've been betrayed in this country by those we've elected. And I'm not talking about the last 4 years. I'm talking about all the years before that, for a very long time. And the fact is that we were. And, I listened to Catherine Austin Fitts quite a bit. And she explained over recent years that, major money was moved to communist China in the mid-90s. So this is a, communism versus no communism, okay, in this country and for the world. This is the choice that we're at, tyranny versus no tyranny, a light and a beacon of freedom versus dark ages. Now, all of the energies support the light, but God is giving us a chance to choose. And we were shown in the Schumann that tyranny can be broken up easily through our intentions, and that's the video from November 16th, link below. But we've also been shown what the choice is: murderous mayhem. And it's really critical. I'm not here to mess around. My commitment to the work that I do is not for this week or this month. It's not to get it's not to get extra clicks today. I've already made my monetization goalposts months ago. Okay, I've been in review for months now. Okay, so so extra clicks are not what I'm about. My work is about having integrity and speaking from my authenticity and sharing what I've learned with you guys. Because what's important is human consciousness. And that's why I left my career in finance to do this kind of work and to change my life. I did that because you can always find another investment banker. You can always find someone who is, extremely smart and good at those things. But for some reason, God put me on the path to understand spiritual energy human energy and the dynamics and mechanics of these things. And I can tell you right now that 10 years ago, I had no idea that this is what I would be doing. But my heart guided me and God guided me this way, and I can see why now. You know, when I was working in finance, what I came to conclude was that the people that run a company, the person at the head of the company, that the entire company reflects their values, their morals, and who they are as a person. Okay? The one who calls the shots. By the time I got to the end of my career, if I could meet with a CEO, okay, for 45 minutes, an hour, if I could get that one-on-one time, all I would do is talk to them about themselves and their life. Because that would show me what the company was going to do in operations, in marketing, in how it treated employees, and how it treated its customer. That one person mattered that much. And you, my friends, are CEO of your own life. You're CEO of the family, okay, or co-CEOs. And you matter that much. And what I came to see is that if the world was going to change, okay, that I wasn't here to save the world. I was here to save myself. Because if I could get right with God and reconnect with that divine force within me, which I was separated from for so long, that it created a powerful, powerful effect in my life. And one person shining the light just in their own life without trying to influence anyone else does influence other people, because you bring this higher frequency, you bring the awareness, you put it into the energy around us. You put it into the sky, if you will. And human consciousness reflects that back to us, in my view, in this spectrogram of pictures. But what I have to say about, and it's perfectly legitimate to look at other charts, but what I have to say to you is that this is the time to hold the line. And by that, for me, what that means is this is the time to get right with God. This is the time for courage in your life, whatever that means for you. This is the time to stand up and step forward. This is the time to encourage yourself and whoever else you can in your life. Getting right with God doesn't mean letting people walk all over you and abuse you or use your energy against God's will for you. No, that's when we have to have the hard conversations. Okay, that's when our warrior nature needs to stand forth. We're being called forth. The Creator created us with the free will to align with the Creator or to walk away. It's such a challenging life. But yet, despite all of that, the most brilliant crystals, the most brilliant natures get developed in the process. And you and I and all of us can be proud of what we accomplish. And I'm not talking about necessarily just the big things. I'm talking about that conversation you had with a friend. I'm talking about when you did right by your parents. I'm talking about when you made an ethical decision and you did the right thing. I'm talking about when you stepped forward as a witness. I'm talking about those things. Because that's what makes the changes that really determine what's going to happen in our life and what our life is going to manifest, what the outcomes are. We can't take it with us in the end. But what endures is what's talked about in Corinthians, I think it's 1:13. Love. That relationship with God is what endures. The relationship you have with yourself of love is what endures. The relationship you have with others based in love lasts forever. It lasts. It's immortalized by the soul. God remembers you. God remembers you no matter what. I used to do something called prayers for the planet. And when I've done the prayers for the planet work, what I've seen is the dark forces, key ones return back to the Creator, like the prodigal son, and the Creator receives them back with love and no judgment, because that being made that choice to return home and become one with God again. Now, in some of this energy work that I've done, I've learned about the special relationship, or shall I say the special energetics of Africa. And I want to talk about this with reverence for Africa and all that it represents. I was first exposed to South African energy through a client and friend of mine. And I became very, very aware as soon as we started talking, because I had conversations with this person when they were in Africa, in South Africa, and they were doing energy work because they were called to do it. And when we were talking and I was looking at energy, I was very aware of the African, the celestial beings. They're both celestial and they're very much alive in the people. I could tell the spiritual connection of the people was so strong that their higher selves were just present, observing the conversations. And so I was very respectful and honoring of that. What had to happen had to come from Africa. It had to come from the people there and from the land. But that was my first exposure to the African energy in that way. I've been exposed to it before through other people. And I have a video about the Maasai from almost a year ago in September 2019. That's a beautiful, beautiful story. And I met someone, a wonderful woman, who's related to the Maasai. And I talk about that in that video and go into the details. But then what happened after sort of, it's almost like the spiritual guides were preparing me, and even the energy of Africa was preparing me for some work that I did in 2019 with another friend who's a light worker and spiritual energy worker. And a very strong person, thankfully. So what happened was that I ended up being involved in, of course, with others, the higher selves of humanity, celestial beings, archangels, specifically Archangel Michael, in doing some work in not Africa itself, but the energy grids for the planet in two key points in Africa. And one of those key points was South Africa. Now, there's this whole discussion that I'm not going to go into, but I want to bring it up, about this idea of a soul trap, or that souls were recycled on Earth. I saw the geometric structure that existed at some layer of dimensional reality for this concept. And what I could see in energy was that it had been sort of grounded into the Earth planes at South Africa. And what I saw was an incredible amount of celestial and human higher self energy work and African energy work that deconstructed the corrupted geometry that held this energetic structure. It deconstructed it and freed the souls. Now, it was based in it was based in energy, in the grid structure, the energetic, you know about ley lines and that sort of thing. It's this kind of a thing. It was wired in, okay? Now, this is done. It's gone now. But in the past, it was wired in. Now, in the higher dimensions, it's gone, okay? And now what happens is then that work filters into our reality. And I don't know when we're going to really see that, but I think over coming decades, it's going to unfold beautifully. But so what I saw was that the corrupted geometry was loosened, freed, the souls were freed, the corrupted geometry was removed, and all the grid lines were healed and restored to their divine blueprint in a sacred geometrical state of activity, of being. And what this did was it freed up the soul energy of the earth, and it freed up the human energy. The other thing that happened in Africa, and now the thing is that was for the whole earth. It was just wired in at Africa, however that worked, okay, over eons. And the other thing that was wired in at Africa was a very, very deep and terrifying. And invoke the violet flame and ask for Archangel Michael's presence in telling the story of Africa from the beginning, where I saw this take place, that the celestial forces did this work there. But what I could see was that there was these entrances into what are known as the tunnels of Set. And this is a place that is extremely terrifying. And the reason it's terrifying is because so many human souls, so many human beings were murdered. What I could see was it was millions upon millions, and so many of them from Africa. Africa would have a much greater population than it does now, but for this. But the thing is that though these things were wired in there at Africa, they really represented the story of humanity across the globe. And what I saw was Archangel Michael and his legions enter the tunnel and kill the Spider Queen. And all her minions, all her eggs, everything. Now, I was tossed out. It was just too much. I was an observer, because this is something that Archangel Michael and his legions took hold of, and it was like a pitched battle. And what I saw was that it was mirrored, that there were human battles by human military that were also taking place that mirrored these battles, not in a worldwide conflagration like in the First and Second Wars. No, this was different. These were small, pitched battles, but critical battles. Critical. But these things were wired in, and they were wired in there because of the power there. I saw all of that cleared in energy in the lower dimensions. And I'm invoking the violet flame. I'm invoking Archangel Michael's presence, because it was a big deal. It's through divine grace that the timing is now, and that we're alive now at a time when these energies are being cleared and have been cleared from the earth. And I say have been because, in a way, I'm speaking from the future when I say that, because I was looking into the higher dimensional states and seeing what transpired. In our current timeline, all of this is unfolding, and it's part of all of the dissonance that we see around us. And what it means, and this is what I wanted to talk about with the light coming in at South Africa at this time, that is the divine at our backs. And I think you are right to focus on that, because it's appropriate that the light comes in there that supports all of us, because that's where the grid for so long held the suffering of all the souls of humanity. And it's appropriate that this, in this critical time. So over the decades to come, all of this, and over the years to come, and over the weeks to come, and specifically over the weeks to come, this critical decision and this critical outcome of the United States of America's election, and whether we install a president who believes in the freedom of the people and the original nature of our founding documents, whether we have that or a group that wants to completely replace those. That's what's at stake here. And I'm not in agreement with that. I do not consent to that. My choice is for freedom. My choice is to align with the original founding documents and constitution of this country. I'm just putting that out there. That's what I'm intending and what I'm praying for. So Have we covered it all? Let me just look here. The calendars. Yeah. So this is what I want to say. In the way that works for you, okay, you can create it. We are all going to be part of causing the resonance to show again in the space observing system charts. We are receiving the light. You guys have found it. It's appropriate that it comes from Africa. What I want to tell you is that it's going to show on this chart again, but it's up to us to flow that through our hearts. It's up to us to take action. It's up to us to have faith. It's up to us to call on God. It's up to us to bring it through, to carry the baton across the finish line. And the reason why is because God's offering us this free will choice between tyranny or freedom. And the Creator wants to see what we want. What do His people want? Whether you voice it in a YouTube video for God knows how many people to hear and see that you've never even met before, but you want to share your love with. Or whether you voice it just in your heart between you and God, that's really all that matters. Or whether you speak it out on the wind. Or in whatever way you do that, that's what matters. You matter. Each one of us helps create this. And the more awake and aware you are, in my view, that adds a quotient of light. It adds like an exponential effect, both in your personal life in terms of when you get right with God, just amazing things start to happen, miracles start to happen in your life. But you also are living that energy and living the blueprint of that in your energetic field. And because energy in motion is always in motion, it flows out to all of the fellow human beings around you. And we reconnoiter. We share this energy together. And we create what happens in the world. And we ground the light of the divine in our hearts.